We are picking it up in Psalm 107 and verse 35. We left off in 33 and 34 yesterday, saying that God can dry things up and that he can take away the fruitful abundance because of wickedness, because of sin, that he'll deal with justice. But now look at, this is the contrast, and remember, this is a psalm that was designed to teach young Hebrew kids how to relate to God and who God is, and a bit about his sovereignty and providence, that when God is doing the work he wants to do, he can dry up a land and dry up a river and take away the abundance that he's blessed with because people have forgotten him. And the lesson there is, don't let the blessings cause you to forget the blesser. Don't begin to worship or idolize the blessings or take them for granted, because one of the greatest wicked things we can do is live unthankfully or live presumptuously. But look at verse 35. He turned the wilderness into a standing water. Now think still waters. Think fresh water, think nourishment, not stagnates and algae and bacteria, but think life, okay, and health. He turns the wilderness into a beautiful body of standing water. He can take the driest place in life and make it rich with nutrition, make it rich with blessing, make it rich with potential growth and harvest. And that's where he goes next. Dry ground into water springs. Now, think about this. The Middle East, the Holy Land. If you've ever been there, and if you haven't, go with us. Okay, we got a trip coming up in the end of November, early December. We would love for you to join us. Email Ashley, ASHLEE @ebcnewington.com, and you'll get information about that trip. We would love to include you on it. But the Holy Land is a barren land for the most part. There's a lot of desert, there's a lot of rock, there's a lot of sand, there's a lot of barrenness. So the idea of barren land would have been just right there, everywhere around them. And by the way that the Holy Land is situated, you've got the Mediterranean to the west, and you've got the Jordan River Valley to the east. And then you've got this barren wilderness that comes up out of the Jordan River Valley, ascending into this desert region. But then you get to these mountain regions where Jerusalem is, and it's kind of a spine that runs along the length of the country just about. And you get into a bit more fruitful land that can grow some things and sustain some life, and it's got some springs to it, some underground springs. And then you descend out of those hills, the Judean hills, down toward the Mediterranean coast. Well, the Mediterranean coast, of course, is real lush and fruitful. And the further south you go, the drier and more barren you get, down toward the Dead Sea or the Gaza Strip. The further north you go, the more lush and green it becomes, the more Mediterranean it becomes, especially the inland, the land between Jericho is the city, the Jordan River. I don't know if I said Jericho River or Jordan River. Sometimes I feel like I misplaced my words. Jordan River Valley, city of Jericho, is down south. But the further up the Jordan River Valley you go, the more lush and green that land gets, more fertile it gets. You start moving from desert to cropland, and you see herds and flocks and crops. And further north you get to Galilee, and a little west you get to the Jezreel Valley, which is also called Megiddo, and it's lush and beautiful. And today that land has just exploded with growth. Well, what is the key to that explosion? And that is the water table. It's water, okay? Water changes everything. And that's the picture here that the psalmist presents, that God can take the driest place in life and water it and bring it to life. And he can produce water springs right out of the dry ground. And from those water springs, verse 36, there he maketh the hungry to dwell, that they may prepare a city for habitation. So verse 36 is beautiful. God can take a dry place, bring it to life, bless it, make it able to sustain life and explode with life. And he can bring the hungry hearts of his people to that rich place where they can not only be sustained, but where they can be flourishing and where they can multiply into a city for habitation. A city implies radical abundance, a lot of water, a lot of wildlife or livestock, a lot of crops to sustain a lot of multiplication of families and on top of families, and a place where people can dwell safely. So you have the sense of provision and protection. A city was a safe place. A city was an abundant place. A city was a place of life and health and flourishing and celebration and commerce, and it was a place of destination, a place of provision and protection. I mean, so you got to get all this into your mind, that God can take a desolate place in life and make it flourishing. Okay, now what does that mean for you? Well, put it into the context of the whole psalm. That this psalm talks about being in desperate distress and then crying out to God for help, and then God bringing deliverance. And the contrast here is that he can take the worst places and turn them around entirely and completely. He can take poverty and make it wealth. He can take want and turn it into abundance. He can take very thin margins and turn it into big margins. He can take a negative balance and turn it into excess. I mean, wherever you are in life, my friend, the answer is God. Your dependence on him, you're crying out for his deliverance, and then waiting for him to bring you forward into that place where you can dwell, where you were hungry, but now you're dwelling full, satisfied. You're building a city, so you're multiplying and you're flourishing. Look at verse 37. And sow the fields and plant the vineyards. This is what's all over the Holy Land right now as I'm speaking, which may yield fruits of increase. He blesseth them also, so that they are multiplied greatly, and suffereth not their cattle to decrease. So whatever you have is God's blessing and provision. Thank him for it. Don't presume upon it. Don't worship it or idolize it. Steward it. Enjoy it. Celebrate God's provision in your life, and steward it well. Enjoy it. See it as God's blessing. And then think of this, friend, and we'll tie it up with this thought, okay? Maybe you're catching this devotion in a day where you're dry. Your life, your heart, your soul is dry, okay? Or your home, or your marriage, or your church, or your job, or your career, or other relationships, or other aspects of your life. You just are floundering in dryness and in need, or in want, or in a desert experience, in a barren moment. Well, the answer is to cry to the Lord and wait. Don't do the wrong thing, do the right thing. And then patiently wait. Keep doing the next right thing until God breaks through. And he will. And I wish I had the time to tell you so many stories in my own life of God moving me from a barren place to a fruitful place, from a dry place to a well-watered place. But it's happened many, many times. 10 years ago, right now, let's see. Yes, 10 years ago, right now, I was in between chemo treatments. Not sure at that moment if chemo was saving me or killing me. Chemotherapy. Cancer growing in 5 places in my chest, and just desperate for a clear mind, frankly. And I remember distinctly by March, I was about a third of the way into maybe getting halfway into my chemo treatments, which were about a 10-month ordeal, and just thinking, I can't do this. I can't do more. Every treatment was getting worse and worse in terms of its impact, and I just felt like I couldn't go on. And yet, one day at a time, God brought us through that dry, barren season. 8 years ago, 9 years ago right now, God was wrestling with me about a call to pastor and to transition to a new place. 8 years ago right now, it was my first winter in Connecticut, and I was just working through it. I was depressed and discouraged, and it was a dry time of life spiritually and emotionally, and the church was just starting to recover, but it was just a dire, difficult moment for me emotionally. I had a lot of good friends and a lot of faithful friends, and praying supporters and encouragers. A great support world, but internally it was just hard, arduous time. And right now, today, our church is flourishing, our school is flourishing, and it's a summer season for our church. Even though COVID's been hard, God's brought us into summer, and we're rejoicing. So, my friend, you take hope. You cry out to God. You go to Him. You get into His Word, and let the water of His Word turn the desert of your soul into the fruitful fields and the abundant, beautiful, flourishing city of habitation that He wants to make you and your life and your family. And I hope you will just keep holding on to Him, because He will not fail you.